Welcome to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann, the stories about entrepreneurs, business leaders, and HR professionals and their successes and struggles along their journey. In this podcast, we also discuss the HR challenges that people face and the tips and strategies that have helped them. If you love to learn through storytelling, join us. Welcome to another episode of Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann. Today, my guest is Dan Snow. He worked in the advertising agency for years, and then he decided to reinvent what an advertising agency is. He's the founder of Snow Collective, and I love his model. Welcome, Dan, to my episode today on Rev Up Your Potential.
Hi, Hilda. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thanks for coming. Can you tell us a little bit about the Snow Collective? What is that?
I would love to. I'd love to. So, as you were saying, the Snow Collective is a marketing and advertising agency. And the way that we work is slightly different than the models that you see in market. So, the Snow Collective effectively runs with myself and other senior team members as part-time directors of marketing. And so we go in and we sit with companies' leadership teams, and we are their marketing experts with their senior staff. And the way that we support that company is we can either then run a marketing department that they have internally, or we come with a full suite of folks who can execute all different types of marketing communication tactics. So we go in as leadership, and then we either use the team they have internally, or we bring a full marketing department in with us. And what I love about this team structure is that we aren't structured with employees like a traditional agency. The way that I've created the collective is that it's actually a group of seasoned, experienced consultants and content creation companies that I've consolidated into one service offer to help deliver all of our clients' needs, requests, hopes, and dreams.
I love that. Needs, requests, hopes, and dreams. And I love the word collective because I know a lot of us who are entrepreneurs, as we continue to build our business, we connect with people who resonate with us.
Mhm.
And then we want to see if we can help our clients by offering other additional services.
Yes.
And I use your term when I talk about this concept now, rather than just collaborate with others or have associates. I love this word collective. I guess that's your marketing, advertising savvy that created this wonderful word.
Oh, well, and I actually see it coming up more and more in market now, especially as the economy moves towards like gig economies and there's a labor shortage. So I do see more collectives popping up, but there's definitely a different nuance and flavor and like workflow and structure behind each one.
Mhm, mhm. Did you find it difficult to find the right people in the collective? What are some of your tips and strategies for finding that right set of people to be part of the team?
So, firstly, when I set out, I initially didn't create long term. The first thing I didn't do was create long term contracts with partners that I brought in. And
Mhm.
so, to begin, I really didn't want to. I always joke that like I didn't want to sign a marriage contract with anybody in case it didn't, in case the marriage didn't go well.
Yeah, yeah.
So firstly, we work on a very project based engagement. And what is wonderful is that if you bring someone in that isn't a fit for you or the client, or their circumstances of their business change and they're not able to deliver anymore, which unfortunately can happen, then it's nice because you can swap teams out really easily. So that way you can identify and solve the problem really quickly, without kind of having those typical like legal contractual obligations. And so, secondly, when it came to actually finding the people, I was very fortunate that when I started the business, I just started as a solopreneur, as many entrepreneur, many businesses do. And I joined a lot of networking groups and a lot of industry networking groups. So some were really focused around referrals, like BNI. I was a BNI member for 3 years. And that was a great place to not only meet clients, but meet partners who were printers and web developers and search engine
Mhm, mhm.
optimization folk. And then the other element is that I'm part of a senior marketing networking group. And that's wonderful because it allows you to tap into talent that often has a similar background. They come from ad agencies, so they know the process, they know the templates. And so it makes it a lot easier to build a core team and then also bring in expertise whenever you need it from your wider network.
I'm glad you share that because oftentimes what people do is they shy away from competitors. Like, oh, I don't want to be in a network with HR people because they're my competitors. No, what you do is you find, opportunities and synergies and fill in each other's gaps. So I love those tips that you've just given us. Let's back it up a bit to the ad agency, being in the business world as an employee
Mhm.
and then switching to becoming, starting out on your own. Tell us a little bit about that. What made you move over into an entrepreneur world?
Well, I was one of those like savvy 19-year-olds going to college being like, I want to work at ad agencies. Like, this is going to be amazing. And so I started in market research as an intern. And eventually, over 10 years, I ended up working my way through about 6 different agencies. And by the time I exited, like, ad agencies were very good to me in the sense that I met amazing, amazing people. I was able to advance my career really quickly. So I was able to, get promoted and make enough money to live because in your 20s in advertising, that can be a challenge. And then I got to do some amazing work with some crazy big budgets on some fantastic clients. So those were the really high points of that 10-year experience. The other piece that I found with ad agencies is that the culture didn't necessarily jive with me, in that I found that it was very much a work is valued in volume, not always in quality. And
Mm,
I found that there was a lot of passing the buck of expectations. So, for example, in one agency I worked there for almost 2 years. When I started, I had $1.5 million of business on my plate, and there were 4 of us. And by the time I left 2 years later, I had $3 million on my plate, and there were 2 of us.
oh,
And yeah, yeah. So so it's literally like quadrupling the volume.
mhm.
And more often than not, in these situations, I found that the agency would look at you and say, "Well, you're not delivering." And my response was, "Well, you're not setting me up for success." And they didn't ever enjoy that response.
Oh, because
So
I was going to ask you, did you actually tell them that?
yeah, yeah, I'm one of this is another reason why I
Courage.
decided to, well, and I like, I'm a bit of a pot stirrer, in that if I see something that I feel doesn't align with like my values and my integrity, I'm very upfront about that. And that culture I found wasn't inviting and receptive of those kinds of opinions and perspectives.
Hmm.
And so, honestly, like, I kind of agency hopped for many years, as I was saying. And I just felt like, even though I was getting promoted, I felt like I was just failing up. Like, I felt like everywhere I went, like I was leaving and I wasn't doing a good job in their eyes, or I left with a bad taste in my mouth. And then it continued each agency I went to, even though my role was elevating. And so, one day I sat down and I kind of had one of those moments of objective clarity, and was like, okay, like, I'm just in the same bad relationship over and over again. Like, I'm just dating the same bad boyfriend, like, over and over and over. So this is a pattern, and I'm going to continue this and make peace with it, or I'm going to change. And that was when I really said, you know what, like, I want to take a stab at this for myself, and see where it takes me.
And two things that, first of all, the courage, because a lot of people will say, like, think things, but never have the courage to say it. And then the second thing is that term you use, failing up.
Hmm.
When I was younger, people used to get promoted to the level of incompetence, and we called it the Peter principle. They got petered out. They were no longer competent because they had overextended their abilities and capabilities. And yet,
Yes.
you talked about failing up, which means promoting yourself but not doing a good job. And I like how you said it wasn't me necessarily. It was I was set up to fail. I was not given the supports that I needed. So kudos
Yes.
to you for that courage. But obviously, in this reflection, you decided this is not what I want. this is not the kind of environment that I find healthy for me, and I'm going to create something new. So, what were some of those principles that you said,
Mm.
I'm creating something new and this is what it's got to be? What was that?
So it all comes back, honestly, it comes back to people. And I did my first year of post-secondary in Ryerson, and I lived in residence, and all of our floor was filled with like actors and costume designers and lighting folks, like in theater. And what I observed with them was that for school, I was in business school, so I'm like going to macroeconomics, my eyes are bleeding out. And while I'm watching my friends within their industry and speciality, they're what I saw as play. They're getting together, and not to say there's not work involved, but they would get together and they would play and they would laugh and they get out the ukulele and jam, and they would do that for hours, and they would come away with something tangible, whether it's a
Mhm, mhm,
design or it's a screenplay or it's a performance. And I was very envious, to be honest with you, through this experience, because they just got to play with their friends and make something amazing. And so when I started Snow and it was just me, it was really about creating that experience, except within the business marketing space. And so the big changes that I implemented right away, where I only started working with people who I um, liked, in the not just liked, but like we respected each other, we were
mhm,
transparent with each other, and I'm very lucky that, and I referenced BNI earlier. My first clients were out of that BNI group, and they also, as entrepreneurs, saw where I was in my business, so they came in as partners. They gave me feedback, they signed my first retainer, like they were there to participate in growing the business with me. And obviously, there's still like work and deliverables and expectations, but it's all about surrounding yourself with those people who just see your value as a human being, and then also see the value in the work that you do. And as I grew the business, that was really the cornerstone value that I've continued to expand and operate, and to communicate to my teams and clients that this is a really big priority for all of us, because it betters our quality of life at the end of the day.
it's interesting because I'm kind of learning more and more about the NFT space. And
Yes.
as I'm learning, the sense of community is there, that camaraderie, that opportunity to fit in, to help each other. And I think, as you say, you are envious because that's what that was. That was a sense of community. All of them had pieces of the puzzle that could create a whole. And and I think that in marketing and advertising, that also is the creativity and the coming together to create something that's beautiful, that just one of us only can give a little piece of that puzzle, but a team of us with our various strengths and strategies could come up with something, just so much more enriching. I love this kind of people first attitude that you had. We talked offline before, and when you said you started your own business, you felt that you had failed within your career and
Mhm.
that you had to kind of create a mental mindset to shift out of that. Can you elaborate on that concept?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when people learn that you have your own business, they're like, "Wow, good for you. You must be so passionate, and you must have loved what you did to go and like create this entity that has your name on it." And I'm like, "No, honestly, like I just thought I was a terrible marketing employee, and I was like, what's my skill set that I can pay my rent with?" And that was the crux of the service offer anyway. But but yeah, it was really tough because even though I had these amazing experiences and we delivered amazing campaigns, the voices around me always were the not enough voices. You're not working enough. You're not delivering enough. You're not working hard enough. You're not good enough. And those were literally things that like bosses said to me directly.
Okay, so it
Directly.
wasn't just coming from here, it's
No,
coming from
no.
there.
Fortunately and unfortunately, it wasn't just created in my mind. I wasn't projecting all of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and to the point where in one of my exit interviews with a senior leader at one of the ad agencies, we had he there was someone in running our department, and I said to him like, "Listen, I'm leaving because I know that if I have someone telling me that I am small for long enough, I am going to start believing it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
have to go. And honestly, over those agency changes, because that was the running theme, I did feel very small at the end. And I did, like, the 6 months after me starting my business was me really just like recovering from burnout. And then honestly, I had no idea what success would look like. Like, in the ad agency world, I knew that I wanted to, be an account director by this age, and a VP by this age, and a managing director. Like, I had a ladder of success that I was chasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I felt that I had failed in that environment, because I was seeing people at that rung of the ladder that I was at, and they were getting praise and I was not. Quite the opposite. And and then when I left, like, it was just about, okay, well, like, how will I even know that I'm successful when it if and when it happens? And so it was an interesting reframe, especially after, like, starting in this career and structure so young. I've had to unlearn a lot
Yeah.
of the success versus failure mechanisms, or measures, let's say, that were ingrained in me.
And this is where my passion lies in terms of helping businesses, leaders, and employees to be the best version of themselves. I think leaders play a pivotal role in either praising people and uplifting and motivating them, or making them feel little and lack of confidence. And then it's almost like that self-perpetuating philosophy. If you tell somebody they're bad enough, they're going to be bad enough. And you always, you are instrumental in making that happen to that person. So my thinking is, I want to help rev up, you know my word, rev up your potential by helping you as a leader help yourself to be more positive about yourself and positive about others. You know, it's about that, treating people with respect and looking at them at equals. And then to me, the key in rev up is uniqueness. Look at those people's uniqueness and tap into that potential. Don't degrade them, because it's like a ladder. Once you start elevating somebody, they have more skills, more confidence, and then it just goes up the ladder. But once you start saying, hey, you're not fulfilling this, you're doing a bad job, so all of a sudden you think, well, maybe I'm not that good, and it spirals downwards. So
Mhm.
leaders play a pivotal role, and kudos to you for recognizing that this environment was not helping you, that was not nurturing your uniqueness and your ability to happen. So tell us more about some of the successes you've had in this journey of self-discovering, a being an entrepreneur and a leader of a collective. What are some of
Oh,
those highlights for you, Dan?
I mean, it kind of falls into two categories. And the first category is my mental, emotional, and physical well-being. The first big difference, like, my stress level has completely changed. The things that I worry about are very different. Like, I don't lay in bed awake, like, wondering how an email is going to be received or what's coming for me in the morning. And that has just shifted my anxiety levels, my stress levels, just my quality of life has changed substantially. And the other piece of that is what we touched on earlier about other entrepreneurs. And you mentioned, some people won't go to industry events because they feel that there's competition. And the other big shift that I've experienced going into an entrepreneur environment as opposed to a corporate environment is that people who own their own businesses are intrinsically supportive of one another. And obviously, that's not going to be like, that's a very general, broad statement. But in the experiences that I've had in these networking groups, even someone who owns the exact same business as me will jump on a call, will, befriend each other, and they'll be like, here are the three things I did that work really well. Here are the three things I would really advise you never do because they were terrible. And, like, let's have a call again in 3 months and tell me how it's going. And
Yeah.
so I really felt support even from people external to my business, because entrepreneurs, for the most part, really just want to see each other succeed.
I
Um,
think it's because it is lonely. Like, you have
it can be, yes.
nobody else necessarily to talk to about it. So having other people who share similar values and want to support each other, that's, I think, why some of us reach out. And it's fun.
Yes.
It's fun to
It is
collaborate and
fun.
share horror stories and
Yep.
success stories too, right?
Well, and the other nice piece too is as kind of an added bonus, you learn so much about other businesses and other business structures and other offers. Like you become a bit of a more of a knowledge generalist because you just, sat down with a bunch of mortgage brokers over a meeting, and now, so it's great as well because you're exposed to different types of industries and organizations. And so I've got to like learn a lot through surrounding myself with folks who do things that are completely different than what I do. So that's the big quality of life piece. The other side of things are the actual like business,
Hmm.
the improvement in my business experience. So firstly, having autonomy to not only choose your team, but to choose your client and then set healthy boundaries, articulate and communicate those boundaries, reinforce them if they are passed over. So this isn't something else that I had never experienced in a corporate environment. Usually the game was like say yes and then figure out how it's going to make sense. Whereas with us, we have a very set workflow program, set of deliverables. And so it's amazing because now I can sit down with my team and say, is this working? Is it not? How can we change it? And really be selective around who I and my team spend our energy with. And this not only applies to the people who, are partners with me who I pay to execute work, but this also applies to clients. And we're very selective about the clients, the tone, the personality type that it is that we choose to take on. And if it turns out, again, it's similar, as I was saying, with the contractor model, where if something doesn't work, you can move away from it. And we very much do that with clients that aren't necessarily a fit for us.
So elaborate on that, because there are a lot of people out there who feel they waste a lot of energy and stress on the clients that are not ideal.
Yes.
And some of them don't have the courage to say, "I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you go."
Yes.
But when they finally do, they're glad that they did it. So share
Yeah.
an anecdote on that.
Yeah, so there are two. I mean, first, they're kind of two different scenarios. The first one is the client's working you too hard and you're not making money on them. And what
Mhm,
I found myself doing was like, for example, I had one client that would always say to me, like, Dan, where are the leads? Where are the leads? Where are the leads? Where are the leads? And I never sat back and said, well, how are you investing in a sales plan? What sales tool? Like sales and marketing are different things. Like, let me
mhm,
educate
mhm,
you.
for sure.
What I did was I just, again, through my legacy baggage of agency life, I just over delivered. I just over delivered and like, cool, I'll overcompensate. And then you lose a bunch of money on the client. So, my first piece of advice is know what is your responsibility and know what falls outside of what you're held accountable for. So now I have a sales leader where if the client's saying, where are the leads? I say, do you need a sales leader? Because they're the ones who are responsible for generating those and we support, right? So that was the first big shift for me, was putting boundaries around my clients' expectations. And then if they are working me harder than they're paying me, then that's just data telling me that the relationship isn't a fit. So like, look at your data, look at the money, look at the hours.
Yeah, yeah.
And then on the other, so that's the business side of it. And again, and then there's the personal side of it where, for example, like we have one client that we brought on board and they brought in a senior team member after our pitching process had been completed. And unfortunately, this client was very much an Eeyore. Like they just were very pessimistic. They were very accusatory. And, we have a 3 strikes rule. You get 3 strikes. We're going to talk to you at each. I'm going to say, like, this is strike one. This isn't acceptable or this needs to shift. Here's the reason why. And then if we get to 2 and 3, unfortunately, we're not the fit for you. But I'm very interested in preserving the quality of conversation, the level of respect from both us and our client. And if it goes below that threshold, then we don't have any interest in continuing because
I,
our well-being is more important than an invoice.
you're very articulate, Dan, and very reflective of your journey, and I love the how you've shared this journey with us, and the kind of person you are now, running an agency or running a collective, building a set of strong teams, and also building a set of clients that reflect and support the value system that you're perpetuating. So great. Now, part of my job, what I do in People Bright is about human resources. So I'm wondering if you can share some HR headaches, either that you're going to be
Ooh,
looking into shortly, or past horror stories, but share some anecdotes to help my listeners kind of
yeah.
resonate with, I've been there, or yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So the one that comes to mind is, the benefit of working with your friends is that you're working with your friends. The bad news is when you have to have like a conversation about performance improvement, it can
Hmm.
be challenging or it can be awkward or people can take things personally. So one like HR challenge that I have or am in the process of resolving is building a buffer in between myself and anyone that I have close personal relationships to, so that there can be an objective individual to give feedback and help facilitate conversations. So even like a manager, for example, and that's what I have. I've brought in someone who I've worked with previously to oversee operations. So this way, I have someone else who can have conversations or support me having conversations, so that the outcome is goes as well as possible,
Hmm.
and people don't take things overly personally because they don't want. We never want to create hurt or harm, even when the feedback is necessary.
Right, right, right.
And then the other challenge is always, finding the right people and doing that in a way that is often fast. You need them when you need them, fast and cost effective. So that's always the fun game, and usually I do that through referrals, which has been wonderful. And then last but not least, I was sharing with you, I'm going through a corporate restructure right now this year, which is very exciting. But the questions, that my like tax accountant are asking me are like, oh, do we need employees in the future? Is it going to be more cost effective for you to structure at least like a few key employees and everyone else through contractors? So this is where, as I'm going through this process, and you know this about me, Hilda, but I'm very much like, I'm going to collect all the data, hand it to the experts, and then they can explain to me like what they think I should do based on this data. And so that's very much what I am doing as I move through this process, collect the data, understand what it's all meant to look like, and then sit down with people like yourself who I can
Yeah.
say like what makes the most sense, for both me and my team and the business overall.
And I think that's where it's important for us as business owners to gather information, or any a business leader in an
Hmm.
organization, is to gather that data, but then to look at it from a holistic perspective. And that means bringing in advisors, doing the research, listening to things, and then making that decision. But you do need that holistic approach. And I often say that with human resources, it really is important to not just understand for today, but as you scale and grow. So your tax accountant, your thoughts of incorporation are very good questions to ask when you're thinking about scaling and growing. And when you scale and grow, you think 5 years from now, what does that look like? And then, okay, what will it take for me to get from 5 years from today to here? And how do I scale it in a way that I'm not going to blow it up and reinvent it, but to successfully scale incrementally rather than
Yes.
and I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that when my husband and I had our engineering company, we thought about, what would it be like? I mean, we never thought it'd be 125 people, but certainly we started growing and we started thinking, well, if it's going to be 25, it's, whatever. And when we got to 50, we got to think about what it's going to look like 100. But trying to do something so that when you go back, you're not saying, "Hey, we should have done it this way." It's scalable and whatnot. So you're right. People should hire or seek advice from people who are knowledgeable, who have that foresight and can give you that piece of advice, and then to take all of that collectively and look at it. So great. We've had a great conversation. What's up for you next? Like, what are you up to now? And what's the next part of your journey look like?
That's an exciting question. This year, my theme for this year that I've shared with my team is cultivation. So for 2022, we are cultivating our team, our process. We just brought on a bunch of new clients, which has been a wonderful experience, I'm thankful to say. And so our focus this year is to just get the machine singing and build the relationships and feel like we are at our stride. And then in 2023 through 2030, my goal is exactly what you were just saying, which is to scale. So my goal is to scale this business, so that we can take on more B2B clients. That's our specialty, and grow the team, so that we can have a really substantial, solid organization, packed full of really wonderful people, and build something that could be the legacy that I leave behind, and could be my exit strategy and my retirement plan, like for me personally.
Yeah.
So, I'm very fortunate that I have these great lawyers and advisors. I have an amazing business coach. That is something else that I recommend investing in for everyone,
Yeah.
whether you're a business leader or a business owner. And then I also have folks around me that specialize in mergers and acquisitions. I know that you've had this experience as well. And so, in the future, that's my goal. But in the meantime, like, do some amazing work and do some great pro bono work in the community. Like, I love being able to support the LGBTQ community. We make donations to the Indian Residential Survivor School Society every year. So, create a big, beautiful business, still tied into our roots and our values in the communities that we really want to support and be a part of.
I love how you brought the piece in about the LGBTQ community and the Indigenous community, because I think a lot of people love to work for people who have a vision of not just building a business, but being part of the community, having a sense of the community and supporting that community. So, appreciate that you brought that piece in, because that is part of who you are and part of what you wanted to create. And I loved how your eyes light up when you talk about the business that you want to create, because that's what it's about. When we can create a business that we really care about, that we're making an impression either in the community to our clients, that's what it's good. How do people get a hold of you, Dan?
Ooh, I mean, the easiest way to find me is through our website, which is snowcollective.ca. And you can see some of the work, you can see some videos of the team and get a little flavor for who we are and what we do. But yeah, snowcollective.ca is the best way to reach out and say hello.
Okay, well, thank you very much for taking the time sharing your journey and really kind of all the highs and the lows, and how you've come to a place where you created this great business, Snow Collective. And so thank you very much, Dan, for being part of our day.
Thanks for having me. This is really fun, Hilda. I really appreciate the
I'm glad you
invitation.
liked it, and
So
I love to create conversations that help our listeners. So here's the pitch for the listeners. If you liked it, give Dan and me a thumbs up. And if you like it a lot and want to learn about other interesting people and their journeys that may help you in your journey as a career, as a business, then subscribe and follow us on Rev Up Your Potential. Have a great day. Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date on our latest episodes. For HR tips, news, and strategies, or if you're interested in being a guest on our podcast, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.